Hey Astro Kids, and welcome back. And this will be my interpretation of what it looks like to have Ketu in the 5th house, Rahu in the 11th house. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. So before we get into Rahu in the 10th house and Ketu in the 4th house, we first have to understand who these entities are. So Rahu and Ketu are actually the same entity. They are one, and they are coming from the story of the churning of the ocean of milk, where there was a great battle between the Devatas and the Asuryas, and there were many casualties on both sides. So the Devatas were looking for a solution to this problem, and they found that the solution was to churn this great ocean. And from this churning, there were many gifts that came up from the ocean. And one of these was the solution to their problem, which was the amrita, the nectar that gives immortality. And so the plan was for the Devatas to gain the assistance of the Asuryas to churn this great ocean. But the amrita was only for the Devatas. And as the amrita came up from the ocean, the Asuryas quickly grabbed it and ran. And so Vishnu came in and gave support to the Devatas by disguising himself as a beautiful woman named Mohini. And he was able to trick the Asuryas. He charmed them with his attractive looks through this Mohini figure while secretly giving the Devatas the amrita behind his back. But there was one Asurya that did not fall for this, by the name of Swarabhanu. And Swarabhanu knew that there was something going on. And so he disguised himself as one of the Devatas and sat next to the sun and moon, and he was able to get a drop of the elixir before he was caught by the sun and the moon. They exposed him as an imposter, and as a result, Vishnu beheaded him. And usually, as Vishnu beheads an entity, the entity is liberated. But because this Asurya took a drop of the elixir, part of him became immortal, but another part of him became stuck in this reincarnating cycle. And so he was trapped in the reincarnating cycle here on earth. And this is what this dynamic of Ketu and Rahu is all about. Rahu is representing this incarnation. It is what brings us into this world. Rahu is very worldly. It's all about our desires, our ambitions, about the things of the outside world. Rahu is an extroverted energy. Rahu also is about our destiny, our purpose. It is our unfulfilled desire that we are drawn towards in this lifetime. We have karma that we were not able to fulfill in a previous life, and this is where Rahu is taking us towards. But at the same time, if we lean too far into this desire, we can become obsessed and over-attached in this area, which leads to disappointment and misfortune. So in this way, Rahu is also about illusion and deception. Ketu is the liberated half of this being, the tail of the serpent, which is all about our past life experience, our roots, our foundation, where we are coming from. It is all about the past. And Ketu is related to deeper truths, to research, to analysis, to digging deep below the surface to find deeper meaning. Ketu is detached and dissociated from this material existence. And so in that way, where Ketu is in our charts, we have a tendency to detach in that area, to neglect that area, to abandon that area. But at the same time, because Ketu is our roots, it is the source from where we are coming from, we also have a feeling of comfort and safety in that area where we tend to escape back into that area when Rahu becomes overwhelming for us. So it is a back and forth dance between these two positions of Rahu and Ketu until we are able to learn these karmic lessons to balance these two areas. So it is very important that we are understanding the lessons of Rahu and Ketu as far as where they are placed within our natal charts. So what does it look like to have Ketu in your 5th house, Rahu in your 11th house? Well, just a quick disclaimer that this will all depend upon how these are positioned within your chart. So you do want to pay attention to what sign is Rahu and Ketu positioned in, and how are they being aspected or conjuncted by different planets within your chart. This will make a huge difference in terms of how this will play out. We also have to first look at Ketu's position, because Ketu is our past life experience. It is the root, the source of where we are coming from. So as Ketu is placed in this 5th house, this is a very interesting position, because 5th house also is associated with our past life talents. And so as Ketu comes into this 5th house, you are bringing with you a great deal of intelligence and talents from a previous incarnation. You could have even been in a position of fame, of power, of influence, where you had a great deal of wealth and a great deal of popularity. And so coming into this lifetime, Ketu in this 5th house is going to make you very much focused on yourself. And this will be especially true during the Ketu Mahadasha, when the 5th and 9th aspect of this become active. So during your Ketu Mahadasha, Ketu will aspect onto your 9th and 1st house, and these will also play a huge influence on your life. Ketu in this 5th house can make you very much interested in your talents, your hobbies, your creativity, your enjoyment. This can be a very romantic house where you are getting very much indulged into romance, dating, pleasure. And this can also distract you, though, from your goals, from your dreams, as you are getting swept into this romantic area. Ketu in this 5th house can cause issues with your education, as it aspects onto the 9th house of higher education and sits here into this 5th house of education as well. So because you have a great deal of intelligence and creativity and skills that you have gained already in a previous incarnation, you can find that there are difficulties around conventional education. There can be breaks in your education. You can abandon your education. You can find disappointments within your education, issues around teachers, mentors, any kind of tutors, anyone who is trying to help you. There can be difficulties with being heard or understood by these figures in education. You can lose track on a course or have difficulty finding the path that you want to take within your education. And although this is causing difficulties in education, again, you are someone who is extremely intelligent. You have a great deal of knowledge and wisdom that you have already gained previously. This is actually a great position for understanding astrology, scriptures, mantras. You can be someone who is very much knowledgeable about religious and spiritual subjects. Ketu in the 5th house can also cause issues around children. So you can have all sorts of strange situations. There can be difficulties around having children. There could be a disinterest in having children. Or you can find that you just have expectations that you've put onto your children that they are unable to fulfill. So this can be a bit of a difficult position around children. With Ketu in this 5th house, you can have all sorts of talent, but especially around 5th house activities. So you can be very much into drama, into theater, acting. You can have interests around photography, creativity. And again, this is a great position for knowledge, for any kind of deep insights. You can be an excellent researcher, excellent at getting into these deeper subjects. Ketu in the 5th house can mean that you are someone who likes to have a great deal of attention. You don't like when others aren't listening or paying attention to you. So you have a great love for being in the spotlight. At the same time, though, you can also have some shyness in this area as well. So there can be a back and forth, and we'll talk more about this with Rahu in your 11th house, as there's a dichotomy happening here between this 5th and 11th house. Ketu in the 5th house can be a difficult position in the sense that you are still trying to bring in those situations around your past life experience. So you can still have an interest in being the center of attention, of acquiring all of these gains and all of this achievement. But in this lifetime, with Ketu in this 5th house, this is about being selfless. And so anytime that you are being selfish and putting a huge degree of focus on your own personal desires and interests, this can lead to disappointments. You can have a lot of disappointments around relationships as well, because this fifth house again has to do with romance. You can find that you're getting yourself into romantic situations that don't last. There can be all sorts of setbacks and disappointments in this area. You can have situations where you put your partner on a pedestal where you have expectations that they are unable to live up to. This can also give issues around the father, particularly during your Ketu Mahadasha, because again, Ketu is going to aspect onto the ninth house of your chart. And along with this is also, especially again during this Ketu Mahadasha, going to put a huge transformation in your life. This is all about the development of yourself and your talents. So you can go through dramatic changes as Ketu aspects onto your first house. So if we go to Rahu in your 11th house, this is going to give you huge desires. And again, this will be especially true during a Rahu Mahadasha. And you want to check if there are any planets, especially with Rahu, but also with Ketu. Planets can strongly impact these nodes. And in particular, I say Rahu is very important to look at because Rahu is very good at disguising itself, at adapting. And so any planets that are with Rahu can play a huge influence on this 11th house. Rahu in the 11th house is going to again make you someone who is very idealistic, who has very high ambitions, high desires. You have strong goals in life. And when you're focused on these goals, you can gain a great deal of success. But again, we're leaving behind the 5th house. So this 11th house is less about yourself and your personal interests, but it becomes about the group. So Rahu in this 11th house is about gaining success through the group. And so in this area, you can attract a great deal of support from all places around you. In particular, you can attract support through your siblings, as Rahu is sitting in this 11th house of elder siblings, aspecting onto the 3rd house of your younger siblings, friends, cousins, neighbors, and we have this aspect onto your 7th house of partnership as well. So you can attract a great deal of support through your connections. There can be people coming into your life giving you opportunities, giving you the support that you need to gain success in life. And with Rahu in this 11th house, this again can make you highly ambitious. But what happens is when you begin to go back to that 5th house Ketu, focusing on your selfish desires, this is where you can run into disappointments. Also, Rahu is about illusion. So if you are getting into any kind of deceptive actions, scandals, this can backfire. Rahu is immediately going to take away anything that you are trying to attain by the wrong means. So you want to be very careful in this area. Rahu in the 11th house can increase your wealth. And in particular, it can increase your wealth through foreign connections. It can increase your wealth through the internet as well. So if you are doing something that is involved in the media, that is involved in large groups through social media, all of this can increase your wealth. Also, Rahu in this 11th house can get you involved in large group situations. So this is all about, again, moving into this area of being a part of the community, of being involved in the group, of giving back instead of getting into this selfish area in the 5th house. So Rahu in the 11th house can get you involved in all sorts of groups, spiritual groups, political groups, charities, and organizations that are all about the upliftment of society. And this is where, in this area, this will bring you a great deal of luck and opportunities through this giving back to society. Sometimes with Rahu in the 11th house, again, you want to look at the planets that are involved, because sometimes this can create situations where you have deceptive friends, where you have people who are causing you difficulties through your connections. So you want to be careful about who you are connecting to. Rahu also in this 11th house can give you a great deal of confidence. So you can be regarded as a leader of your group or as someone who is very popular, very influential. Others can look to you. Sometimes Rahu can give a fear around relationships, a fear of being cheated or taken advantage of, as it aspects onto the 7th house of partnership. So you also can pull back from relationships. Again, it is rooted in Ketu being in that fifth house of romance, where you can pull away from your desires to connect with others. And so, again, this is this axis of Ketu and Rahu in this 5th and 11th house. This is all about moving into this area of connections, of groups. So when you're pulling back from this and moving inward towards yourself, towards your desires, getting distracted from this higher purpose, this can cause some difficulties for you. Rahu, as it aspects onto the 3rd house, can also get you involved in traveling, in different activities and opportunities. But this all becomes about gaining these opportunities to succeed in life. Rahu on the 3rd house aspect is all about your communication. So coming into this 11th house of groups, you have excellent confidence, excellent communication skills, which allows you to network and to gain these opportunities through those connections. With Rahu in this 11th house, you may seek to surround yourself by powerful and influential people to seek opportunities. This can be an area where you can achieve success on your own through your self-efforts, but typically this is going to bring you people and situations that will help to support your goals. And again, this becomes all about moving into this area of your connections. And so ultimately, this axis of Ketu in the 5th, Rahu in the 11th is an excellent position that can get you wealth, that can get you status, that can get you all sorts of situations around gains and wish fulfillment. But only when you are being selfless, when you are using your knowledge, your talents, your skills for a greater purpose than yourself.